It's going to be about 30 minutes, give or take. They don't have much more time than that, so we have to keep things a little bit brief, but there should be time for a few questions to be thrown in as well. I'm not super familiar with Zoom, so if anything crazy happens, I apologize in advance. This is like my second time using it and only my first time using it for more than just me and one other person. I think you're good, Jamie.
Okay, cool. Hey, what's up?
Nothing, we're just waiting. I don't think they're quite here yet. I think you unmuted it. Are you muted?
Unmute.
There we go. I think I got you. Okay. I mean, if you happen to see, are you a host on this?
I did.
Let me make
Not
it.
sure how to use this.
Okay, yeah. So. All right. And then I'm just going to make sure everyone's video and audio is off who's not Jamie, myself, and the authors, because that's the way they wanted it. But again, if you have questions or anything you want us to try and bring up, the little chat is in the bottom right corner, I think. If you're on a laptop, I don't know about mobile, but feel free to pop in there with anything.
Yeah, I don't see the chat on mobile.
Oh, there's one.
Hi, Lauren.
Let me unmute you there. Sorry about that.
Hi.
Oh,
I'm just waiting for Christina.
Let me get your video unblocked as well. I know your last name, so.
Let me send Christina the link because she, I think, has the wrong one.
Is it Christina Hobbs?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, she just asked to join, so I think we got her coming in.
There she is.
Hello.
Hi. How are you guys?
Great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our first author chat, so we're a little nervous, but we're very excited.
Oh, it's going to be great.
Yes.
Are you recording this, Danielle?
Yes, I have it. It says it's recording. This is my first time using Zoom for anything like this, so hopefully there's a little flashing red dot that said recording, so we're hopefully good to go. So everyone, this is Christina and Lauren, obviously, the authors of Autoboyography. Yay! I'm Danielle, in case that wasn't obvious, but and then Jamie there. We are the co-owners of Rainbow Crate, and we have a few of our subscribers or followers watching and listening as well in the corner there. So let me admit this person in. So again, thank you for coming and doing this. This is really exciting for us. So just a little bit about why we chose you guys for this particular thing. Our November box is about self-love and self-care. That's coming up next month, obviously. And so we thought Autoboyography fit that pretty well with the journey that Sebastian takes and that Tanner takes, but particularly Sebastian, and coming to understand and accept himself alongside his religion there. So if you guys don't mind, if each of you want to take a couple of minutes or so, just introduce yourselves and just a little snippet about yourselves, that'd be great for anyone who's not familiar with you guys much.
Sure. You want to go first, Christina?
Okay. Hi, I am Christina. I live just outside Salt Lake City, Utah, and used to work in a junior high counseling office with teenagers, and I loved it. I'm a full-time writer now, and I'm really lucky, but yeah, I miss it sometimes. And this is my co-author, Lauren.
Hello, I'm Lauren. I am a Bay Area native from California, and I now live in Southern California. My background is I have my doctorate in neuroscience, and I was doing research and just writing fan fiction, and met Christina online. And when we met in person, it was just like we clicked. And so we decided to start writing together, and Autoboyography is really the book of our hearts. I grew up in the Bay Area with a very supportive family, and Christina worked with a lot of kids in the junior high who had less supportive situations. And so the story really came out through our conversations and just like loving these kids. So it's sort of a love letter to those kids and kids like who didn't have the situation I had. So.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you kind of answered one of my questions, or our questions, which was, how did you guys actually meet and decide, hey, let's write books together? Because before I had looked up any information, I just assumed Christina Lauren was on one author, and I was like, cool.
Yeah.
And then I started digging, and I was like, oh, wow, this is co-written, and this is very smooth for a co-written book. So how did you guys split that up? Because I mean, I can't tell where one author starts and one ends, and obviously it's a good thing, but
Yeah.
like how did that work?
I mean, it's been a lot of effort over the years. We've been writing together since 2009. And initially our books were alternating point of view, and it worked having two people because it was good when the characters sounded like different people. But as we wrote together more, we got really good at editing and smoothing out sections so that it sounded like one voice. And so now we have a number of books that are just like single point of view. So I think part of that is because we edit extensively. So we tend to draft pretty fast and then we edit slow. But also for Autoboyography, this was probably the most like carefully outlined book we've ever done. We always outline, but this one, I mean, we went to Utah, we did a ton of research. We had one of our really good friends had gone to BYU and was kicked out because he told his bishop that he had kissed a boy. And so we like went through the whole process of like living in that town, and we visited the high school, and we did a lot of research. So we really had a very clear idea. So this one just came out of us so fast. We drafted it really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So you did a lot of research, and I had read some articles and stuff after I had read the book because I was curious on whether it was personal experience or whatnot. So can you go a little more in detail of like exactly what some of that research looked like and what your experiences were gathering it and with the Mormon experience and how that worked its way into the book?
Well, so I live in Utah. I'm not Mormon, but some of my family is. So I've lived here my whole life. We had 6 kids in our family, and I remember like one of the first things people would say to me is, "Oh, what ward are you in?" And I was like, "What's a ward?" I didn't know what that was. So I've been surrounded by it my entire life, and like I said, living here and working here, especially working with kids, there were a lot of kids who would come in, whether they knew that they were gay or were questioning it. But I feel like sometimes those kids can kind of find that safe space. They can kind of like just pinpoint it. So they used to come into my office and hang out, and whether they thought it was, it's not true, but to them it felt so real that their parents would rather have a dead child than a gay child. That feeling was so real to them. So they would just come into my office and talk. And all the time I would just be like, it's not you, it's them and how they see your life kind of unfolding. It's them that has to change the way they see things. It's not you. So I live here. Lo came out. Our friend Maddie brought his diaries. He let us read those. Like
letters.
Yeah, his letters to his parents and stuff. he went with us. We went up to BYU and kind of walked around. It was so funny because it looked like Lo and I were like taking our gay son, like dropping him off at school or something. And the whole thing seemed really familiar to me because I live here, but I imagined, you know, all the time I'll be like, oh my heck, or something, because I worked in a school and I'm so conditioned to like talk like that. And Lo and I, we were in BYU and there was some sort of school activity coming in, you know, going on. The kids were playing hacky sack outside and stuff. And we walked into this like game room and this kid like messed up and he goes, oh my heck, like really loud. And Lo was just
gosh,
like,
darn it.
Gosh
It
darn
was so
it.
wholesome.
It was just so perfect in sort of this like little pure moment. And Lo could probably speak to this, but there was a moment we went to Temple Square and that you know, some missionaries, when they go on missions, their kind of like mission is to work at, you know, at Temple Square as a guide and help people and stuff. And so we went in and there was this girl from Australia who was almost done with her mission. And Lo, who grew up not religious at all, was asking her sort of like, you know, what is it like? And, you know, asking her these questions. And she became so breathless with like joy about like how when she has a problem, she just prays. And there's so much of Sebastian's sort of like explanation to that from that moment. Don't you think so, Lo?
Yeah, I mean, I think for somebody who grew up without any influence from a church or any sort of religious structure, it's very hard to believe that people actually believe this stuff. And I don't mean that to sound disrespectful, but you don't know that feeling of blind faith. And so when we're writing Sebastian, we have to write it from a place of empathy where he grows up believing this to be true, and that everyone who loves him believes this is true, and that their feelings about his sexuality come from a place of worrying about his soul versus just judging his life because they're terrible people, right? We don't ever want to malign one side of this story because people are raised in the context that they're raised in. This is the framework of their life. But I have a very hard time understanding how it feels to trust religion. And so when we went in and we spoke to this woman, just seeing her and how she was like vibrating with joy when she talked about it, it really helped sort of realign my understanding of what it feels like to be connected to a higher power that way. And so I think it really gave us a lot of, I don't know, just empathy, I think, for what Sebastian was struggling with, but more than that, what his family was struggling with too, you know?
Yeah, I think honestly, I grew up in a religious household and y'all did a really good job on handling that because we were talking about in the book club, I completely understand where Sebastian's coming from and not wanting to abandon his faith, but feeling bad. And it made him feel very guilty. And like, I know Tanner's frustrations were very legitimate. It's very frustrating. But at the same time, this is what Sebastian, you know, grew up with, and he believes this wholeheartedly. And it's hard to separate that from who you are because that's just ingrained in him. But y'all did that very well. And I felt like y'all handled the balance of not demonizing religion, but making it see from where they were coming from and where the other side's coming from. So I appreciate that a lot, especially growing up religious, that it wasn't completely demonized, like, oh, this is the worst. And like you said, it's how they're brought up. They're genuine about their concern. It's not necessarily hatred. Sometimes it is, obviously, but a lot of times they're worried about this person and what they're doing and how it could affect them in their religious walk or afterlife or whatever.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not Mormon, but I live here. I'm surrounded by it every day. And there are a lot of things I do not agree with the church, a lot of them, but they really do a lot of good. And they bring people a lot of comfort and a lot of joy. And even though Sebastian's parents make him feel terrible and say things that he overhears and, you know, stuff, they really are. They believe, like, to their soul that if he chooses this way, they will not be with him in like the afterlife. And so they're doing it because they love him and they want to be with him. And even though, you know, obviously that's not something that, you know, we would understand or anything.
Awesome. So y'all write a lot of adult books. I think Autobiography is your only young adult. Is that correct?
It's our third. We have
Third.
three. We have
Okay.
2 paranormal and then autobiography.
Gotcha. I've mainly seen your adult ones.
Mm-hmm.
But how does writing the adult differ? Is there a different process you guys go through from writing the adult and young adult? Obviously, you have to kind of tone down some of the stuff from adult to young adult. But outside of that, is there a different process you guys go through, or anything like that? A different mindset you have to be in? Anything like that?
So our adult books are more commercial fiction. They're definitely meant to be fun, escapist sort of, if you can get a break from the craziness of 2020 while you're reading the book, then we've done our job. And they're a lot of fun to write. They should be a ton of fun to read, we hope. But I think when we're writing for a YA audience, there's a different pressure there. It's not so much about entertainment as it is also about, at least now that we've written autobiography, I think we feel like it's a more vulnerable population that we're writing for, and we take it seriously in a different way. Not that we don't take writing romance seriously, because of course we do. That's like a very precious community to us. But I think when we are writing for young adults, we just want to make sure that the story has meaning and that you can tell that it's written from our heart. And so we do get asked a lot if we'll write more YA. I think the chances are good. It just would have to be kind of the perfect story in that sense, that really has a message of hope and support and love in the same way that autobiography does, because that was really transformative for us as people writing this book. So I don't think we could do anything less.
Absolutely. Awesome. So can you tell us what your favorite part of autobiography is, whether it's a scene or a chapter, and or part that you wrote, anything like that, for each of you, what your favorite part of that was?
My 2 favorite moments in autobiography are, I think the point where they're on the mountain and Tanner says, I know it's not his first kiss, but it's his
first real one.
His first real one.
Yeah.
And then the moment when they're under the willow tree and Tanner's mom hugs Sebastian, because he just needs that so much in that moment. He just like needs a mother's love in that moment. And I'm not a super emotional person, and I cried during that. Lo wrote it, and I cried when I read it. It's just so perfect.
Yeah. I really love when they're looking up at the stars. We actually had an artist illustrate that scene of them laying on the hood of the car. I love Sebastian's coming out. I think that whole scene on the mountain was probably like one of the best things to ever write. Just in terms of like author satisfaction, it just felt so good. This whole book came out like in one long stream. Sometimes it's like getting like blood out of a stone just trying to write a book. This book was not like that at all. I don't even feel like we stopped typing. It just like we typed until we were done. It was so great. So there's a lot of scenes, but I think the first kiss and then when Sebastian came out.
Great. You said you had a lot of dual point of view books. When you started autobiography, was it always just Tanner's point of view until the very end, or did you play with the idea of inserting Sebastian's point of view other places, or?
I mean, we get asked a few questions about the point of view stuff with autobiography. One is this, which is, why don't we have Sebastian's point of view? And I just think that would be a very angsty place. But also, and there's something about being in Tanner's point of view that keeps this story lighthearted as it can be, right? So like Tanner is kind of snarky. He's sort of, he takes things seriously, but he's funny to himself. And I think that keeps this from being too hard a read. I think if we were in Sebastian's point of view, the things that Sebastian's going through are really gut-wrenching. And not only are we not LDS church members, we are also not struggling with the same thing. And I think we wanted to make sure that we didn't sort of mire the book down in that feeling, which is not to say that his feelings are not completely legitimate. We just didn't think we could do it justice. We do also get asked why we wrote a male instead of a female protagonist. And that is really because most of the people that Christina was working with in the junior high who came to her were boys. And so this was really sort of, like I said before, a love letter to the boys that she knew and who grew up with Christina as their like comfort source, right? And so we wanted them to make sure they felt seen. So
Absolutely.
And I had a student who came to me years later, who's like, I think he's like 25 now.
Yeah, it was his birthday yesterday.
Yes, it was. And he came to me years later and said that he had come out, that he had just, realized that he was gay. And he read that book and he said it was the first time that he felt like really seen in that way. The moment that, Sebastian's parents are talking about somebody else's parents, and that that this boy got married, and they say, "How's his mom?" It's not how is he, it's how's his mom. And he said that felt so real to him. And the little things that people say, not realizing they're being hurtful and stuff. And so that was really wonderful. In a lot of ways, this book was sort of this like love letter to these kids that I never got to see their happily ever afters. And so it was really wonderful for him to come back and say that he read that and that it affected him so much.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat, which is, I'm wondering, I'm a member of the faith talked about in the book. Did you talk to anyone within the LDS faith while writing this book? Yes.
Lots of people.
We've probably had 20 different people that we interviewed, who read it through, who gave us feedback, who, talked through stuff. And I would say most of the things we got right in the first draft, because we had done so much research from the beginning. We have a friend, Maddie Coolish, who the book is dedicated to, along with all the teens out there. And he grew up in Spokane as a member of the LDS Church. And he had all of his journals and his letters and communication with his bishop and communication with his parents and everything for us to pour through. And then we have a number of friends who are both current and former members of the church that helped us with the planning and the language and all of it. So, and Christina has, many of her family members are Mormon. So we did have a lot of help in terms of the church aspect.
Great. There's another question in the chat. They just want to know if the first draft that you wrote was different from the final draft. You kind of touched on it in that answer there, but
yeah.
I think the part that we rewrote the most was the ending. But aside from that, I think it was pretty similar to the
there were minor tweaks. I mean, there were I think there were a few things, like when it went out to sensitivity readers, we sent it out to a number of them, and there would be like phrasing changes and stuff. But for the most part, the story itself didn't change very much.
There's like a very specific phrasing in the Mormon church.
Yeah.
About things, and for the most part we got it right, because like I said, it's things that I've heard growing up, but sometimes something has changed, or and what was funny is some of the feedback that we got from people who were like still members of the church were that we were almost too nice, but it was really important to us not to demonize anybody. So I'm really proud of like where we landed on it.
That's awesome. You said it's been, obviously it's been several years, and just out of curiosity, I haven't looked it up yet, but do you guys know if there's been any change? I know there's a lot of talk in the book about Tanner and Sebastian hoping that there's I'm drawing a blank on the word.
Revelation.
Or what, a realization or whatever about the LGBT community. Do you know if there's been any updates since then?
So it's funny because I think we had just finished it, or it had been out just a little bit or something. And Lo texted me one day and was super excited that they had made, the LDS church had made this site that's like, I don't know, it's like lds.org/
something
LGBT or I don't know exactly what it is. And, she was super excited that they had changed something. They didn't change anything. What they did is essentially you had, like we touch on it a little bit in the book, conversion therapy and things like that. And essentially there are people in the church who were using what they thought the church's stance was to sort of like discriminate against people and be kind of awful. And so the church felt like they needed to say, here's where we stand. Like, we love everybody. Everybody is welcome to be a member of the church. That doesn't mean that you can, like they recognize same-sex marriage, all of those things. But essentially, if you live this certain way, which means you aren't seeking same-sex relationships and stuff, you're fine, which is not okay with me because
everybody has a right to seek.
Everybody has to seek that and to find love and to be loved and all of this. And so it has not changed. I do think that it will at some point because I feel like if the LDS Church wants to stay relevant, they're going to have to change. Even the Pope has said that they need to recognize same-sex unions. Like if the Pope is saying it, like they're going to have to. There are just, I think, more people who feel like it should be that way than don't. They've had revelations to allow, Black people to be members and all kinds of stuff. There's going to be a revelation about it, I think. There just has to be. For them to stay relevant in this world, there's going to have to be.
Jamie, did you have any particular questions?
Can't think of anything that wasn't already answered.
They were very thorough.
We could talk about this book for hours. So I hope we haven't waxed on too much about it, but it's
no, absolutely not. It's one of my favorite books. I recommend it all the time to people, and I was very excited to do a reread. I think the first time I read it was about 3 or 4 years ago. So when the opportunity came up, I was like, let's do autobiography. So, and we've gotten a lot of feedback on our when we've talked about it, that people just absolutely adore it. So we're very, very glad for you guys to do this. It looks like we have a question about, did they get a union? I don't know exactly what.
You mean Tanner and Sebastian, or?
I think so.
So it's funny because we do get asked a lot if we're going to write a sequel because people want to see like what happened after. And I always say it would just be a book of kissing because I think they would, it'd just be a big fluffy book. So
happily ever afters and kissing.
I like to think that Sebastian and Tanner, they're very young when they enter this relationship. It's their first like serious relationship for both of them. So I encourage everybody to like explore and date and make sure you're whatever, but I love to think that Sebastian and Tanner figure it out.
That's awesome. It's always nice to get a little preview after, even if it's not necessarily.
We always tell people write fic. There are some, but we're just like write fic, write the happily ever after you want to see.
Definitely. Well, we appreciate you guys coming out. We're coming to the end of our time here that Zoom is allowing us. So
thank you for having us.
No problem. Do you guys have anything you guys want to kind of throw out there to anybody, to the group or anything?
I will say that when we were writing this didn't exist, but now there's this wonderful group called Encircle that's in Utah. It was just in Provo, but now they have them in Salt Lake City and St. George and stuff. And they are sort of a space for teens to go, and they offer counseling. And it's exactly what Sebastian kind of, would have needed. And they're just a wonderful place. They have lots of moms who come and volunteer, and it's funny because in Provo, they are literally across the street from the temple.
Like it's a beautiful Victorian house. We actually donated our advances to Encircle. And so we got to go visit them and we got a tour, and they're really amazing people, but they have this gorgeous Victorian house and it's like literally across the street from this giant Provo temple.
So in my head, Tanner and Sebastian both volunteer, and that Tanner's mom is always there.
Yeah, with her aprons and her bumper stickers.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We really, really, really appreciate this. And we're going to post this to our Facebook and probably Instagram if we're able to. I'm not exactly sure. Jamie's the Instagram guru over there. But if you guys want, we can also email you guys a copy.
Great. Yeah, we would love to share it. So just make sure you tag us and we will put it out there. So
definitely.
thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.